welcome to the show. This is MindForce, the podcast for love, life, and learning, where the progression and development of your mind is key. Today, we have Jason Lookabaugh, or better known as the Enlisted Optimist. Hey, Jason.
Hey, Nate. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I'd like to give you the floor and give us a little bit about yourself. One of the best parts about podcasting is getting to meet all these people I would never have the chance to talk to, and really allowing people to know you more. You do short format videos, which are amazing, but now people get to know you a little bit more. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So a little bit about me. Like you said, I do the short videos. Once upon a time, they were a little bit longer, and I had a couple of people that was like, hey, so our attention span's like 10 seconds. Maybe we cut them down from 10 minutes to 3 minutes. And I was like, I'm sure I could do that. But yeah, so for those of you that don't know me, Jason Lookabaugh, I go by the handle, the Enlisted Optimist, when I do speaking events, videos, things like that. I've been in the military for about just shy of 15 years now. Prior to that, I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. I graduated high school at 16 and just hit the ground running, went to college for culinary arts right out of high school. So I was like the youngest person on campus. And then I went on to do that for about a year, ran out of money for that because I was working a job full time, going to school full time. And my sister, Amy, who is about 6 years older than me, was in the Air Force at the time. And so I went to her and said, hey, this Air Force thing seems like it might be the best fit for me. What do you think? And she goes, well, yeah, it'll definitely give you money for college and all that stuff. She's like, Joey, I don't think you're a good fit. My biological name is Joseph Wesley Perkins, so that's what most of my family will call me. So she goes, all right, cool. So why do you think this would be a good fit? And I'm like, I don't know. It can't be that hard. Kind of like you see your big sister do it. It can't be hard. And she's like, yeah, Joey, I don't think it's going to be a good fit for you. You kind of have a problem with authority. And I was like, I don't feel like I have a problem with authority. I feel like I have a problem with people who don't know how to utilize their authority. And so while that sounds super insightful, at 18, that guy was not this guy. So that guy was an anarchist. I'm 100% convinced. Like, I don't know how I went from like the brink of insanity to like slightly put together. But if that guy was doing videos, y'all, they would be all over the place. So when I was younger in my career, it was definitely one of those things where you couldn't tell me anything. I felt like as the brand new guy, there was just something about me to where my work ethic alone was going to solve all of the world's problems, all of the military's problems. And because people were willing to follow my craziness and just like drive right into the abyss with me, I thought that made me a fantastic leader. And it didn't help because lots of things continued to like flood that persona of me of like, I must be doing everything right. And it wasn't until like I got to my second base and I ran into somebody very, very big impact on my life and my career, Christopher Yannion. Still friends with him to this day, absolutely phenomenal human being and phenomenal leader. And he kind of sat down with me and he goes, hey, so Jason, you're really good at your job, but you're really awful with people. And I was like, how dare you? I'm great with people. And he's like, no, you're good. You're a people person. You're not good with people. And it was one of those things where like I just kind of started to mold this over. I'm like, who does this guy think he is? Like, does he just not know me? And I was just so full of myself. I felt like I had all of the answers. I felt like I had to be the guy that had all the answers. I felt like I had to be the smartest person in the room. And you really could not tell me anything. It was such this toxic behavior that honestly, I'm not really sure how I even became an NCO with that being the forefront of my mindset. But after meeting him and really kind of getting knocked down a few pegs, and it wasn't just a one and done conversation. He really continued to be alongside me and mentor me. And he was just a really close, like he was a higher ranking individual, but he's very, very close. Somebody that I could confide in if I was going through a tougher time in my life. And really took the time to mentor me, talk with me. He was also from Ohio, so we had a really easy connection. And for a year of my career, I just continued to learn from this man, small little things here and there. And like a lot of like the weird one-off leadership expressions that I'll have. I wish I could claim full credit. I'm sure I've changed them a little bit, but I would definitely give him a lot of credit for some of the more unique quotes that I do have when I do videos and talk with folks and things like that. And really, I took a lot that I learned from him and just realized like, it's okay to be a completely unique human being. and to have all these different things and to look at folks and go, you know what, if they can do it, I can do it. Not because I'm better than them, but because they're facing some of the same challenges. So if I face those same challenges, it must be possible. And so with talking with him, that's kind of where I developed that, the basic of this, of just kind of like changing people. And that's why just hearing the whole vibe of your podcast of like mindset and things like that, that's really the goal of the Enlisted Optimist, is even if it's just one person, is to change the mindset of one person generation after generation as they move forward, and really kind of changing that. The human in me sees the human in you.
Absolutely. That's some good stuff. So I'm kind of curious. I think a lot of times in the military, sometimes we're hesitant and we don't want to have that difficult conversation with someone. So in that particular case, you're going on this trajectory. If that person doesn't sit with you, I mean, where do you end up? I mean, I guess we'd have to, try to predict, but I think that's a good point to make, right? Like, we're like, oh, we're not going to talk to them. We're not going to tell them. But if you allow that person, to keep going, they're going to go down the right path. So even though that conversation might be difficult, so could you touch on, maybe how you think you would have gone, or, having difficult conversations?
Yeah, actually, as crazy as it seems, I'm actually dealing with that right now. We have a younger airman, so full of potential, so much of like, I see all of the essence of really where I was at. And I'm kind of like looking back and going, all right, so what would he have said to me in this moment to do that? And I had had a conversation with that person and kind of talking with them of like, hey, kind of the direction that you're going, I get it. I know where you're coming from. I recognize the emotions and the things like that that are driving you to feel like this is the best possible action to take. The individual got paperwork, which I am no stranger to paperwork. I've gotten it at all different types of levels. We make mistakes. It is what it is. It's what you do when you meet those barriers. And I was talking with this individual, and it was, well, I don't really feel like I need to do a response or anything like that. And it's, well, you've got to be able to tell your side of the story. You've got to be able to show people that you care. Well, you can tell that I'm upset. You can tell that I care. No, I can tell that you're upset by this. I can't tell that you even care about this, that you're going to make a change or anything like that. And so as I talked with the individual, like, it was just kind of like an ebb and flow. I didn't really know really where the conversation laid at the end of it, but I was kind of like, hey, like, as you move through this, if you need to continue to talk, just let me know. Well, when I was talking with their leadership, they were like, I don't know what to do with this person. They have so much potential, and it just seems like they're wasting it. And I was like, well, once upon a time, I had a whole lot of potential, and somebody thought I was wasting it. I was like, now there's two different paths here. It's like the individual has to be able to see that there is another choice to take. I was like, but on the other hand, that person is the one that chooses. I had to choose. And like you said, I don't know where I would be at if I didn't make the choice to put my pride aside. And maybe it was just the right person at the right time, kind of when the student is ready, the master appears. And so it's that the timing, I believe, timing and proximity is one of the biggest things that I tell folks. I'm like, it's everything. When you're going for awards, when you're going for rank, when you're trying to accomplish a goal, when there's a certain thing in your life that you're trying to get to, it's something as simple as buying a house, timing and proximity, it just plays into so many different things. And as I was sitting there talking with the two of them, I was like, she's got to want it. The individual has to want it and want this change and see the need for it. There has to be a felt need for it. Otherwise, it is what it is. Now, the person does have a lot of indicators of like, they do want to improve. They want to progress in their career. Said that they want to do this as a career and have a lot of personal goals. They want to make E9. Like, it's a huge deal for them. And I'm like, okay, let's do that. But this has got to be tempered. It's an admin career field. So there's a lot of professionalism, which obviously means different things to different people. But there's a lot of things that have to be kind of tempered down so that you can do this. And it's just something I was talking with my daughter about earlier. Like, we all get upset about things all the time. Like, life's not fair. Careers aren't fair. Like, things aren't going to go the way that we want. But like, this is the only life that we have. We can either sit here and be upset about it, or we can go, how do I make the best of what I've got going? And that's kind of what the advice I gave him. I was like, you can't give up, but she can. She can literally say, that's cool. I'm done with this. I'm not going to re-enlist. I'm not going to do this anymore. I don't care. And she can begin the spiral. I was like, but all we can do is be there for this member, make sure there's no deeper thing going on, and make sure that we're there for them in every way that we can without enabling negative behavior.
Mm.
And seeing us be there for her could be the thing that helps change her trajectory and really sets that example for her of, yeah, this stuff sucks from time to time, but here's how you handle it instead of that. It's a hard lesson for some people to learn sometimes. And I'm trying not to get into specifics, obviously, to protect the member themselves. But yeah, it can get really, really tough when you have those potentially difficult people that have so much potential, because obviously you have so many different emotions of yourself that you're mixing into this because you're conflicted. And so, yeah, we've navigated that even recently.
So to follow up on that, I mean, as leaders, NCOs, senior NCOs, CGOs across the board, have you seen any specific tips or tricks to set the room, or how do you go through those difficult conversations with the paperwork and things like that? Because it feels like in a lot of situations you have, kind of oversimplifying, I guess, but two broad categories: the person that receives it and moves on, it's awesome, or it feels like more often than not the person shuts down. So how do you kind of avoid that shutting down and working through that?
Well, first, I like how you said that there's two broad categories, because that being said, we also know that there's a lot of different gray areas in between. So we'll focus on the two broad categories. For advice that I would give folks, for those folks that take, well, I'll just put it out there. The individual that's going to get that paperwork, that you have destroyed their entire world because they can't recognize that this is a turning point. With those people, you really got to do that additional legwork. And some folks may say, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't think it's worth it, or something to that effect. It's worth it. You have to have that chance to talk with them, because they're not going to see 1 month from now, 3 months from now, 6 months, a year from now. They're not going to look at that paperwork and go, thank you so much for giving this to me. They're going to go, well, this really sucks. I can't get this now. I can't get that. None of that stuff really matters. I tell people every day, I feel like when we come into work for the military, we just re-enter the matrix. Like, none of this is real. It's all a figment of our imagination. We go home and we're like, what was that thing that I was so stressed out about at 3 o'clock? I don't even remember now, because it doesn't matter anymore. By no means am I dismissing what anybody does in the military. It's just that reality sometimes, that we get so spun up in things that we make something that really is only consequential to this moment or this situation, and we stretch it out to be like the end all be all. So with those folks, you really have to remind them, like, I get it. This sucks. You may lose this opportunity. You may not be able to apply for OTS now. You may not be able to apply to be a first sergeant. I'm actually speaking about my own personal experiences here. You may not be able to put on that rank as early as you thought you would. You may not be eligible for BTZ. You may not be able to get that promotion at work. You may not be able to go on that trip. You may not be able to do that thing, but maybe there's a reason for it. Maybe you're not ready. Maybe you thought you were ready, but you're not. And this is an indication of that. Now, the thing is nobody has to accept that and go, oh my gosh, thank you so much for doing this negative thing that I know a year from now is going to have such great results for me. We've got to learn lessons. And honestly, at the end of the day, you've got to pay that tax. The success tax is in those moments too. If you want to be at the tip top of it and you don't fall on your face, then that's when you're going to fall. You're going to fall when you're at the top instead of along the way. And if you don't pay that tax along the way and get those stern talking tos and have your moments where you bump into those guardrails and you have to be redirected, then what's it all for? You're going to be that person that thinks they can do nothing wrong, that doesn't make mistakes. And then when it finally happens, you're just gaslighting everybody else and pushing the blame on everyone else. And you're like, I don't do anything wrong. I've got years to prove that I've never done anything wrong. It's like, no, you've got years to prove that someone that should have stepped in and stopped this from happening didn't do it. And so that's what you've got years of. And it's the other side of that coin, the people that are just like, I don't care about paperwork, whatever. Okay, well then what is it that you do care about? Like, how can I give you this feedback in a way that you will accept it? And that's a hard question to have, especially when you're trying to be so stern and just be like, this is what you did wrong. This is the standard. And if you do it again, more like terrible things will happen. How do you have that conversation and on the other side of the coin go, now, why isn't this making sense to you? Because you can tell, like when you slide a piece of paperwork across the desk for somebody to sign and they give you that look of like, it's something, here you go. Like, whatever, cool, thanks. But it's like, but do you understand the ramifications of this? Do you understand why this action is not okay? And maybe it's not a paperwork thing. Truly, I am a big proponent of, I call them unique consequences. because they are driven in those moments of, because yes, there's two broad categories, but I would say in the category of people that aren't driven by like paperwork and things like that, that category is exceptionally gray, more so than the other one. This one's pretty easy. When you get this character, you're kind of like, all right, I gotta go into the playbook here. I gotta figure out how we're gonna get this one across the finish line, because you've got to figure out what drives that specific person in that specific situation and what's gonna make them successful. What do they even care about? Because I've got some people right now that work for me that I know for a fact 20 years is not their goal. 2 years is.
Hmm.
2 years left. And it's like, cool. So what do you want to do with those 2 years? You just want to, this is how you want to lead? You want to be that guy or that gal? You want to be that person that this is what people think of? I'm huge on legacy. I think even my recent video that I did talks about that. Like, I am so big on what does your name mean to you? It's only fitting that I've got like 12 different names, but going through foster care, being adopted, like I got so many different names, but my thing is I have so much pride. And when I put my name on something, it must mean something. It has to be when people go, you know what? Jason must have done that, or Sergeant Lookabaugh must have done that, or this must be from this particular person. I have so much pride and ownership of that I talk to people about that. I'm like, what do you want people to look? And some of them literally have told me, I really don't care. And in those moments, I go, cool. So when you transition out, what's our plan? How can I at least give you something now to where when you do that on the other side of it, you can feel better prepared. And then that becomes the carrot. And I'm not like bargaining with people for good behavior, but realistically, that's what we got to do sometimes. That sucks. But I can sit here and be upset about the fact that I've got to bargain with people for good behavior. Or I can accept the fact that that's the reality. You just can't do that with every, because then you're just that person that's people pleasing. But yeah, every once in a while, they'll be like, well, when I get out, I want to go start a business. I want to do this. I want to do that. Cool. Then one of the most important things to that person is their time. Your behavior improves. How do I give you more of your time back? And so it really is, and sure, it's conditioning to an extent, but that's what paperwork is. I'm conditioning you to not do the bad behavior anymore. It's like when we put our kids in timeout or whatever the case may be, they get grounded. What we're hoping is for them to stop doing the bad thing. It's no different with people. One of the things that I talk about, and you got to be really careful with this because it can come across as manipulative depending on how you do it. It's a pressure point. People don't move unless there is a pressure point being applied to them to make them move one way or the other. You're walking down the road. One of the pressure points that's going to be applied to you is if there's a car coming directly at you, you're going to move because the pressure tells you, I don't want to get hit by this car. You're 30 in debt and you realize that you're about to lose the house. The pressure point being applied to you is I could come home tomorrow and I will not be able to get into this home. What can I do right now? And so things like that, there has to be a pressure point to get people to do what they're supposed to do. And you can do that in leadership as well. It's like, I'm giving you this stern guiding hand because you're going this way and you need to go this way. That's why we do deadlines. That's why we do the awards programs, all that stuff. There's incentive. And then there's the other side of it where this is the stern guide.
That's interesting. I like how you mentioned the kids because I was thinking of my son. He's 6, and it's funny because he'll do something wrong, and we, try to threaten like spankings or whatnot. And he is so hilarious where he'll just like give you his butt, and he's like, "I'll do that, and then I'll go back to the thing I was doing." Like he doesn't care. He'll just take it. You take the lashing, and then he'll press on. I'm like, "That's not. This isn't what this is for. It's about how it's supposed to work. Don't just take it." Like it's so funny. It's different than the other two, I guess, girls versus boys or something. But it's like that's not the point. So the creative solutions, I guess, are good. I'm like, this isn't supposed to take it and move on. But I had a question for you for goals because I've experienced in my personal life when I switched from E to O. My first commander, his goal was to be a commander, and it's just something that's always resonated with me because I would love to be a commander. And I would love to do it for, the right reason, to take care of the people and be there. Because my first experience. I had some negative things that happened, inappropriate behavior, and some other things. But it just made me kind of think about it, because you said you had a young troop that is shooting for E9. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are. Like, I like the idea of long range goals, but then at the same time, it makes me wonder, like, should that be your goal, or should it be your goals along the way and that gets you to the end result? What are your thoughts on kind of those long-term goals?
I always ask people why. I guess that's the millennial in me. Why is my favorite question in the whole world. I feel like that was just kind of like pumped into all of us. Like, you were born like 19 to 2000. It was just kind of like, you're going to ask why 1,000 times a day. And so I always do that. Like, because one, I'm very curious about people's goals. Honestly, I've kind of made like a sort of kind of additional career on wanting to know what makes people tick, what your goals are, how in any way, shape, or form I can either find something to help you accomplish it or not. And I recognize this from my very first troop. I was a brand new staff. She was an A1C, and it was cool. What do you want to do? And me, when I first came in, I was like, I also want to be an E9. I want to be a chief. And along the way, I was like, love to be a senior NCO. That's just give me a roof, and we're like, we'll see what happens after that. But I was talking with her, and she was just like, "Nah, I just want to be a veterinarian." And I'm like, "What?" And I have a maintenance trade in the Air Force, so I'm like, "You want to be a veterinarian? Like, why?" And she's like, "Well, I love animals. Um, I did like I think she'd done like an internship or something when she was in high school, 4-H, stuff like that." And I was like, "Okay, well, this is new for me. I'm not a veterinarian. I don't know any veterinarians. Let me see what I can do." So I spent like the better half of the day, like researching the best programs. We were in Alaska at the time. So I was like, what do we have nearby? I talked with a couple of my peers and a couple of my supervisors that I had. And I was like, anybody know anything about like veterinarians? And one of my supervisors goes, well, my wife actually works at a vet clinic. And I'm like, oh, sick. Like, can she go work there? And he goes, well, yeah, she's always looking for help. And so I went to my troop and I'm like, hey, I did all these things. Here's the place that I found that you could do this. Again, like, just gave her a whole bunch of stuff that she did not ask for. And I was just kind of like, all right, cool. So we could do this. And then she's like, I'm not interested in the school stuff at all. But that opportunity, that sounds great. And I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. And that was like one of my first lessons of like, one, you don't need to overdo it. You probably need to ask more questions. And then two, of like, I don't have to be the guy that knows all the answers. I have to find the guy that knows all the answers. And that's one of the things Simon Sinek says is he's like, I'm not really interested in being the smartest person in the room. He's like, rarely am I the smartest person in the room. I find the person that knows the most about a subject. And I have them explain it to me in the most basic way so that even I can understand it. He's like, because then I can go and explain it to other people and they think that I know what I'm talking about. And that concept made so much sense to me. I'm like, but it really, you do have to be so humble and modest to take on that mindset of you're not the smartest person in the room. You should always be looking for rooms with smarter people than you. And if you are, you teach people and you leave and you find that room I just referred to. But it was just, this was her goal. And so I'm always asking why. And even with the airmen, I'm like, why do you want to be a chief? And she's like, well, first, and this is kind of what let me know that this airman has so much potential if we can just soften the edges and round things out and get her on the trajectory. Because she goes, well, realistically, first, I just want to be a senior airman because her dad had been in the military, but honestly had gotten out before he ever even put on senior airman. Had things happen, what have you, whatever. But she's like, first goal is senior airman. When she made senior airman, we threw a huge, like, I was like a little jealous and envious because I had never seen a senior airman get this kind of promotion party. Like, it was like the same vibe as like when you have like all of the staff selects come out for their selection party. And I was like, what is this? But I was happy for her that people were giving her this much joy because I'm like, this is what it looks like when people support someone's goal and they let them know, we knew you could do it. You did it. Let's celebrate it. And then what's the next goal? And that's what she said. I want to make staff the first time. And so we broke it down. But the whole time, the why has always been, I just want to do something that actually means something. And so each step of the way, it's always been that reminder of, yes, sure, when you get to cheat, that will mean something. You'll be able to do something, but you can always do something every step of the way. And I always tell her, and I always tell most people, control what you can, where you can, when you can. Because at the end of the day, if you don't take advantage of that opportunity, you're always going to be frustrated that you didn't do enough, that you didn't take advantage of that opportunity, and that you can't do anything to fix the current situation that you can. You can always do something.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone can be a leader, no matter where they're at and what level they're at. I wanted to ask a question. You know, you have the moniker Enlisted Optimist, and so a lot of people might be listening or listen to yours and say, "Oh, must be nice to always be optimistic," but you have to balance reality and the things that actually occur in your life. So, what would you say are your ability to balance real world and optimism?
I've always been a huge, this question comes up a lot, especially when people are like, why'd you pick that name? I'm like, well, because I'm enlisted and I'm a pretty optimistic guy. It's pretty straightforward. But I think that the most optimistic people are probably the most realistic people. It's all about how you take that lens and look through it.
Mm,
Simon Sinek is one of my favorite people that goes to so many different ways because he just has such a conventional and unconventional way of looking at leadership at the exact same time. It's so just everything's kind of rooted in like, this just makes sense. And so I've always appreciated that. And he has this kind of thing where he's talking about optimism. I'm paraphrasing partially because I can't remember all of it. But he talks about walking through a tunnel. And he's like, optimism is like walking through a dark tunnel and looking all the way down the tunnel and seeing the light and still recognizing that I'm walking in a dark tunnel, but knowing that that's what I'm walking towards. And sure, life, we never seem to be able to do the things that we want to do, when we want to do them, where we want to do them, the goals that we're doing for, we're constantly running into challenges. We make plans, everything falls apart. Like life is beautifully messy. And at the end of the day, I can sit, and that's the other thing. Is like one of the quotes that I heard the other day was, at the end of the day, it's the end of the day. And I was like, there's just a very peaceful vibe about that saying, is that it at the end of the day, like that's it. Like you get another chance to, but at the end of the day, like I can sit here and I can focus on every single thing that went wrong, or I can go, all right, well, what did go good? And it grounds me and lets me know, like, hey, man, like not everything that happened today was awful. I cannot imagine the people that walk through life with that weight of everything is awful. Like my heart goes out to them, and I just mentally cannot. And maybe that is a weakness of mine because I can't wrap my head around that. Because I try and see things from so many different points of view. I can understand that it's probably very easy to point out everything. I can look at the things in front of me and go, that's not right, that's crooked, that's this. But at the end of the day, it's like, but that's a beautiful picture. And if you can't take those moments to go, cool, here's what's going right. I mean, I'm not a perfect person. None of us are perfect people. So somebody could do the same thing and look at you and go, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. You should weigh this much. You should have this kind of muscle tone. Your teeth shouldn't be crooked. Your haircut looks weird. You shouldn't have glasses. You should have contacts. Like all of these different things. Oh, your head's crooked. And it's like, cool, but like, what do you like? Oh, you have a really warm smile. When you laugh, it makes people laugh. You're very personable, all of these different things. And it's, but you could just focus on the positive things, not in a way that just completely dismisses the things that people need to work on. But yeah, I think through the process of really being all about self-awareness, and maybe that was when I was a PME instructor, a lot of that kind of got instilled in me. But through the process of self-awareness, I was able to kind of see that optimism is more than just blind positivity. It's really just a holistic consumption of all of it, and just choosing to go, sure, this exists, but this is better. Why wouldn't I stay focused on?
It's interesting that people believe optimism is rainbows and butterflies, and pessimistic is like the world is ending, when we know everything in the world is about balance and spectrums. But I'd like to talk about rawness and vulnerability. Could you share a time or a moment when being raw and vulnerable has led to a deeper connection?
Absolutely. Been through a lot of things in my life. I've mentioned so far I was in foster care, I was adopted, survivor of sexual assault. many different things I've been through. This is now my third marriage. I've got children from 14 all the way down to getting ready to have my newest one here in about 2 weeks. I've been through emotional, psychological abuse. I've watched people go through suicidal ideations, all of these different things. And all this stuff starts to stack up. And you're kind of like, well, that's a lot of bad stuff. And I've kind of like, not in like a martyrdom kind of sense, but I'm like, well, why did I go through all this stuff? You can't help but, again, my favorite question, why? And as I went through life, really one of the biggest things that I noticed is it wasn't in that moment, but years down the road, it has allowed me to be a degree higher than most people when it comes to being empathetic with folks. When it comes to being able to truly relate to what people are going through, everybody's different. So I can't go, I know exactly what you're going through. That would be me taking like 16 gigantic steps backwards by uttering those words. But I can go, I have been through something similar. And I know that when I was going through it, these were some of the things that I was feeling. And if you're feeling even remotely close to those things, here's things that worked for me that hopefully might help you. But if not, just know that I'm at least willing to hear what you've got going on. And so that rawness that I've been able to have with people, because a lot of people are like, why do you share that with people? I'm like, what's the point of keeping it to myself? It serves me in no way to keep this a huge secret and go, all of these awful things that happen to me are me. Like, no, these are things that happen to me. I've got all of my scars. I can share them with you and go, you know what? We both got them. I made it through it. I've watched people that have went through the exact same traumas as me come out on the other side completely different because they didn't get the help that they need. They weren't able to talk to people about these things. They just didn't process it correctly. They leaned on the wrong types of things to get through that situation, and it just didn't work out for them. So being raw has always been something that allows me to be real with people because I'm one of the more blunt people that people meet. Regardless of like the very positive nature of my videos, I'm a very blunt and direct person. There's also another persona of me that will be, this is your goal. These are the things that you said you want to do. You're not doing them. One of the things I'll say with my kids all the time, and it's weird because, like they're on average like 10, 11 years old, is like, all right, I'm just going to be real with you. I say that to my kids every single day because I just feel like there's a level of honesty that has to exist. It's the human condition. We're all going through it, whether you're 9 or 19 or 90. We're all going through the process of being human. And if we can sit there and pretend and go, we're not all dealing with the same things, and to some degree we are. I mean, we all sat there and stared at the sky with black glasses on the other day. Like, I guarantee you a great 60% all stared at the sun because there were about 600 meme videos afterwards of when you stared at the sun too long. So like there's something about the society that when we can not necessarily just share the things that make us laugh and the cute puppy videos and this hilarious comedian, but we also share the things of like pain and the moments of despair that we go through. Like we love those transformation videos, those stories of I was here and now I'm here. We love to support those things because it reminds us of the fact that we're human.
Yeah, I think that's super important too. And I love that you bring it up because I feel like in the military, A-type personalities, you're supposed to be strong, you're supposed to bear all the weight and things like that. So it is awesome that we're moving forward. I know I try to do similar things and hopefully I'll continue to do that. But when I take on a flight, I'll usually do, the leadership principles and the things, very high level stuff about me when I first take over. I don't want to freak anybody out on like the first day or first week, but usually 3 to 6 months in when, the flight and I have bonded a little bit more, that's when I go in. I've been through a divorce and I work through, joint custody and co-parenting. And, I lost my dad and had to do Red Cross notification, fly around the world from Guam. And I've lost most of my grandparents at this point. And so I do the same thing where I'm like, I bring this up not to be this weird negative Nancy and say like, oh, my life, woe is me or anything like that. But I hope that helps bridge the gap. Sometimes I think between the E and O and things like that, where the pedestal is maybe bigger than it needs to. There needs to be structure and respect, and we can't drink and, first names and do certain things, because there is that structure to a certain extent. But to your exact point, we are all human. And so I would rather you be able to talk with me and move through some things, because I know a lot of times we have the open door policy, but if there's no connection, the door doesn't matter if it's open or closed. Like, I'm not going to come and talk to you. I know I've had quite a few first shirts and things like that. They'll say, like, oh, swing by and see me at the commander's call. But there's certain things about them where they don't really walk the walk or whatever, not to brag on any shirts, but there would be no connection. I would not walk in there and be able to have a conversation in that way. So, but I totally agree. Like, if I go through something, I don't want it to suck to just suck. Like, what's the point of that? I want it to suck so that I could potentially help someone else. Like, it wasn't fun for me. Why? Oh, well, that was terrible. No. And another point that I think is great that you pointed out, I will never, and hopefully I never, if someone, catches me, let me know. I'll never say, I know exactly, like, I'm fix it. I did that. No, that's never the intent, but I've been through negative things. And so if you need to open up, you need to, cry, you need to whatever, like, bridge that gap. It's there. Like, we can sit down. I think the biggest thing is trying to figure out what the person needs too. I think that happens a lot. Like, do you want me to fix it, or do you want to vent? Because I feel like those are two completely different categories. Like, I will start calling everybody I know, like you had said, the veterinarian. I will make some phone calls and we will fix it. Or do you need to downpour word vomit and then walk out and be fine? Like, just let me know on those two completely different categories, because I think we all need different things. Because people are so complex. It's interesting. We want cookie cutter things. We want leadership books that tell us step one, step two. But geez, people are completely different. But I wanted to move on to another thing and ask you about self-reflection and growth. And so one thing I'd love to hear your thoughts on are slowing down. We're in a world where you can Google any answer in seconds. You can drive through and get food in a matter of minutes. Like, everything is faster and faster right now. But do you have anything that you do or tips for listeners to slow down and self-reflect?
Ooh, it's the guy who talks a mile a minute. This is one of my greatest challenges. You definitely found it.
Got
Things
him.
that I try. I'm huge when it comes to music. I'm that guy that after a long day, I will literally just put on. I love this new like DJ feature that Spotify has. I promise Spotify does not pay me to bring that up. But it's awesome because it really just, like, the DJ just obviously is using AI and all these different algorithms, but it brings up songs that sometimes, like, I haven't heard, and it puts me in very nostalgic kind of moods. But music's a big one for me for kind of calming down, because without calming down, and it's not because I get like super irate or super frustrated, but honestly, like, keeping myself at high energy, a lot of times being an extroverted person, it can be draining. And I feel like that's the thing that, like, not a lot of extroverted people talk about. They just call themselves introverted extroverts. Like, no, realistically, it's just recognizing, like, even as an extrovert, like, eventually the tank runs out. We're not endless wells. I will get to a point where if you put me in a crowd of people at the beginning of the day, I'm ready. I'm moving around, I'm talking with people, really excited to meet folks, all that good stuff. Going around talking about, by the end of the day, I'm like, all right, so we've got about 10 more minutes, and it's inevitable that someone will come in and go, hey, so I'm like, well, I just need to talk to you about this real quick. And I'm like, all right, cool. Jason's still got to be at full energy, full awareness. I got to be 100% me for this person right now, because that's why they chose to come to me, because they need the version of me that they're used to.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing when I was a PME instructor. I had to be all the way turned up every single day. From the moment I opened that door to the moment that I went back into the instructor hall every day, I had to be 100% on. And so to my point, calming down can sometimes just be going, all right, giving myself permission to go, hey, Jason, we're out of it. You bring it back to its normal steady state, and we're just going to chill. I listen to audiobooks. When I finally can say that I'm fully recovered from this knee surgery, I love running. I love just being in my own mind is one of the biggest things that helps me slow down. And now I know for some people, like, I'm not going inside my own head. That's a very scary place. Meditation is apparently terrifying for a great number of people from what I've heard. And they're like, yeah, that sounds really great. Maybe I'll do yoga, but like the idea of just meditating is terrifying. But slowing down, just finding the things that ground you. For parents, kids are great at that because one of the kids' favorite things is just to sit with you. They're doing whatever it is that they're doing, and they're just like, "Will you just come sit with me?" My wife's got very good at that as well. She'll just go, "Hey, I don't need 100% of you because I know that you probably don't have 100% of you right now. But will you just come sit with me?" And sometimes it'll be, you know what, I just need to go do this. I need to do something that's just going to numb everything out because the overstimulation that comes from today's society, it's just so rampant. And most days it's unavoidable. That's why we actually have like a whole subculture of people that unplug or go off the grid for a small period of time. They do social media or technology detoxes. Like that's just, if that's what's going to work for you, please do it. Because if you find yourself constantly doom scrolling, you're like, what is the point of this? I have the people that I say, like I say, it's a whole subculture, but the people that do it, they never regret it. They're always like, oh, it's great. I got to unplug. I got to unwind. And I know some people are like, I really don't want to go camping. Don't go camping. Just go do whatever it is without your phone because it's day one, anxiety all time high. Because you're like, what if I miss this phone call? What if I miss this email? What if so-and-so texts me? What if so-and-so FaceTimes me? I haven't seen them in forever. The first day is going to suck a little bit. Or maybe it won't, but there's a pretty high chance that you're going to have that withdrawal. And that's why we need it. For me, sometimes it's literally, I tell people, hey, the do not disturb on my phone is from 9 p.m. to 5. If you text, I will not get it. If you call and you are not this person, or this person, it will not even go through because I have to give myself those moments. And I still find myself plugged in sometimes longer than I'd like to be. So between giving myself permission to come back to whatever my normal status quo is, music is a huge one for me, running is a huge one for me, and then just kind of unplugging yourself as often as you can to whatever extent that you can is definitely a good way to ground yourself and kind of refresh and restore. If that answers your question.
Absolutely. I find it interesting how you can be tired mentally and tired physically, and they're completely different. And it's funny you mentioned the extroverted or introverted extrovert, because I'm trying to convince my wife that's what I am, but she's not buying it. But I remember like running training day for the med group, and there'd be times where, I'd have to run around and do a lot of things. So physically, that makes sense for being drained. But there'd be ones where it was just me monitoring and keeping everyone on track for like the medic rodeo. So doing the stations on the radio, just making people sure, 200 people are where they're supposed to be. And I remember coming home and melting into the couch, like no energy left, even though physically I didn't move more steps, probably half as many steps as I did the day before. But the mental gymnastics to keep everywhere where they're supposed to and talk to people and be, upbeat and things like that. That's interesting. But I do have one question, and it's something that's bugged me from OTS. They had a quote in OTS that said, "You'll have no bad days." And I guess the idea was to not poison the well and bring people down. So to your point, or what you had said, you have to maintain that level of energy and things like that. And back to what you talked about earlier with the rawness, can you incorporate like you not having a good day, but without dragging people down?
Well, I won't like 100% co-sign what the wall at OTS says because one, I'm jealous I never got to see that wall. But so I don't think we have bad days. I think we have bad moments. Now, that being said, it could be that I specifically have not had a full on bad 24 hours. And that's maybe that's the very literal part of me. But that's also what helps me to be optimistic is I go, the whole day was 24 hours. Even if 16 hours of those were bad, I got a good night's sleep last night. And 8 hours of that couldn't have sucked. And so hopefully the goal of that quote is not to, what maybe it's like what you were saying, not to poison the well, but I think it helps us to reflect and to focus and really just kind of go, was that a bad 5 minutes? Or was that really the whole day? And sometimes it can be the whole day. I'm really not that guy that's going to say, hey, I promise you, if you really look, sometimes y'all, we can't clear up the water enough to see through the mud. We just can't because I'll tell you this, That's my overall goal. But there are some days where it's very easy for me to just go, you know what? Today, intrusive thoughts win. This day sucked. That's it. It sucked. But if somebody challenges me and somebody puts me back in that mindset of, Jason, did the whole day suck? All right, if you're gonna make me go through my whole mechanism, oh, the whole day didn't suck. This part sucked, and this part was okay. But yes, I mean, that itself sometimes can be exhausting. So for the people that are like, Jason, is it really always on like this? No, it's not. I just aim for more days where I can focus primarily on the good. Bad days are going to happen. We're inclined just mentally to look at the negative things. It's what allows us to scrutinize. It's what allows us to be skeptical. It's what allows us to use healthy judgment. We're going to have those days where we just look at it and go, it wasn't my best day. It wasn't my good day. My daughter's not having a good day right now, but she got to go to gymnastics, so it's a good day. Right, this hour of the day is a good day for her. But I guarantee you, the rest of the day while she's grounded, a good day. So yes, good days are going to happen, and sure, you may have days that are not as good. My challenge would be is in those moments that you're like, yes, this was a bad day, at least try and give yourself some solace of what was good about it. I'll co-sign it. If you say it's a bad day and you really truly can't find anything good about it, I'm right there with you. We'll co-sign it and call it a bad day. And I can put one on the wall and go, you know what? I found somebody who had a legitimately bad day. Now, don't get me wrong. There are people that definitely have worse days than me. Like if I'm driving and I've had an awful day and I drive past a car accident, like, well, one, I hope everything's all right with those folks. And two, they're most certainly having a worse day. But so it's just, I think it's really just all that perspective. And again, it's messy. It's not perfect. I'd love to say that I look at every day like it's a great day, but not all.
Yeah, I know that's tough. I actually released an episode just a couple ago with my mom on grief. We talked about us losing my dad, and she had asked me like how I process, and it's interesting because it's kind of the same. And I don't know if I'm trying to be too rational or whatnot, but I would just think there's other things that happen in the world. And the example I use, which might be a weird example, but I remember I think it made national news. There was that family that had the duck boat thing, where like the boat that goes to a boat and it drives in the water or whatnot. One of the members of that thing wasn't able to get on with their family. And so this, I think it was a girl, I forget her age, I think it was like a teenage girl, lost her entire family in a split second because the thing rolled over and everyone on the duck boat ended up perishing. And so I just think of things that are worse, and I don't know if that justification is healthy. Hopefully it is, but I think of something like that. You went to school and you came home and 6 members of your family, or however big her family was, are all completely gone. They didn't have any illness, and so it was completely a shock. I can't even imagine how you process all that. Like ours was over the course of years, and cancer, and it's not fun for anybody by no means, but you're able to process and kind of track that along the way. I can't imagine, one, losing your whole family, and two, in a split second, it's just so difficult. So I guess to your point, like things could be worse, and hopefully that's not a terrible way of looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, you always try to be cautious to not focus only on silver linings, but sometimes they do help.
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like you got your daughter back. Is she back there?
Yeah, she's back there now.
Now she's stuck. So I have, I guess, one last question. Don't want to keep you for too long, but I'm curious your thoughts on EPBs and strats. And so I guess the final question is trying to navigate comparison, our structure and whatnot. And I think in the civilian sector, you still have some type of annual appraisal and things like that. Like, what are your thoughts when the list comes out and the line is drawn not where the person wants it to be, and they're just like, I'm better than this person and I'm worse than that person and things like that, but navigating comparison?
Well, oh man, you got like one very military specific, and then navigating comparison very like humanity as a whole thing. So I guess I'll briefly touch on each one. EPBs, OPBs, strats, all that good stuff. At the end of the day, what I'll say, and this is just directly to anybody who might be listening, maybe you didn't get the one that you thought you needed to get. Obviously, EPBs are a little bit easier to stomach these days without all the extra stuff going on, the people putting undue weight on things. you mentioned civilian appraisals and things like that. My master's degree is in HR, and performance appraisals each year are supposed to have a certain goal. You set that goal with your supervisor. You do the things. If you met the goal, then they go, hey, we had talked about this at the beginning of the year. You did all these great things. The thing that we set the goal for, we're going to go ahead and push you forward for that. You don't meet the goal. Hey, here's some things that you fell short on. We're going to work on it next year. We'll see it back. Let's push for this thing. And that's if you have a good supervisor, all that good stuff. No different than the military. We've taken that process and we're getting closer to it now because the feedback is being kept between the rater and the ratee. But there's still extra stuff going on. It's what about this block? Did you put the right things in it? And the thing is, we just created a new game. And that's another reason why I say we're in the Matrix, folks. It's not real. Is we just created a new game. And we expect people to figure out the rules day one. I mean, I can't play the game of the new Mario thing without dying at least 12 times before I figure out exactly how it works. And we want people who are playing with their careers, their livelihoods, their way forward. And we want them to figure it out in a day. And then we look at them and we go, you're dumb, or you made a bad choice, or this is your fault. And we've got a process that didn't even have updated guidance out for it before we took it off. And you want to say that's our fault because our folks were putting fluff in things. It's like, you didn't explain to us what the rules of the game were, and you put us on the board and told us to play the game. That process, I have a huge issue with. It was one of the big reasons why I had always said, like, I just want to be in a position where I feel like I can make an impact on something of that magnitude, because I feel like there are some things that we do great. And then there are some things organizationally that we just seem to miss the mark on. Just Jason's thoughts. Master Sergeant Lookabaugh is reports as ordered. But Jason just has some issues with some stuff. And I feel like that's okay. It's obviously still remaining professional, explaining this to folks to where, again, Staff Sergeant me could have created a whole army of anarchists. I promise you he would have done it. But me going, I get why you're frustrated. Why you're frustrated is a completely normal thing to be frustrated about. That's not wrong. What's wrong is what we do with that frustration. So EPBs, OPBs, when they're used for exactly what they're supposed to be used for, we're able to capture what people did in the year, tell that story. I always talk to people about their EPBs, OPBs as this is this year's chapter in your story. Whatever it's supposed to say, it needs to say that. And at the end of the day, I always tell them, be actively involved in whatever your story is going to be. Make sure that this chapter doesn't get written without your input. And so when you can look at it as the chapter of someone's story, I hope people take it more seriously. I hope they realize that this isn't just a tasker or this random admin paperwork that I've got to do. You have an opportunity to capture the successes and potentially failures of somebody over the course of an entire year. The other piece of this with the civilian aspect of it, and what was the word that you used again?
Navigating comparison.
Comparison. Yeah, that's a fun word. It's what we use to literally steal the joy and remove the actual achievements that we have in life. You could do absolutely everything right, but if the guy right next to you or the gal right next to you is doing it just a little bit better, every bit of effort you put into it, every hour of sleep that you lost, every argument you had with your spouse, every bit of blood, sweat, and tears that you poured into it no longer mean anything. Y'all, comparison will take everything from you and give you nothing in return. Very rarely do you get a positive thing out of comparison because it is just this mixture of so many different emotions. Some people do get drive out of comparison because they will use it to inspire them to move more. But more often than not, comparison will take from you and put you at a lower point on the pedestal than you need to be at. You have done these amazing things. You have done the work. You're still doing the work. If you're going to compare yourself to anyone, compare yourself to yourself so that you can track your growth, you can give yourself feedback, and you can track your progress and growth. I have this conversation with my children. I have this conversation with my wife. It's okay to have high expectations for yourself. It's okay to set high standards. Like I said earlier, I'm so big on legacy and putting my name on things and it meaning something. I carry myself to a very high standard, which is why if I mess up, I'm going to beat myself up worse than you ever will. You don't have the power over me to punish me more than I will punish myself. You just don't have that ability, which is why I am that person. When you give me paperwork, I take it, sign it, and give it back to you. I'll tell you my side of the story, of course, but you can't hurt me as much as I can hurt me. And so comparison, you just have to be so cautious with it. For a moment, maybe, but realistically, compare yourself to you, not to them. They have a whole different race that they're running with different rules, different expectations, different challenges, all of that stuff. If you're going to compare somebody to you, it should just be the previous you.
That is wonderful. There you go. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. You don't know what anyone else is going through. So I'm curious, what's in the future for Enlisted Optimist? You're about to have that baby, or are you on pause for a little bit?
So I don't think so. Last year I had a pretty long stretch of off season. I usually go for about 6 to 9 months for a season of it with a weekly video and stuff like that, mostly because it gives me chances to recharge, but it also rolls into the holidays and stuff like that. And I like to be able to give my family that important time because it's a time of the year that we've designated as very important for our family. So it's usually when I naturally taper off. It'll just be less uniform videos of me in a car and more regular guy like this videos in my car. And maybe I'll be a little bit tired about it. I might skip a week here and there if I really just can't mentally get myself there. Because if I'm not inspired, I can't expect to inspire other people. But no, there's a lot of really exciting stuff. This year, I really wanted to focus on restoration and growth and repairing and things like that. Because it's just not really a big, yeah, sure, there's videos here and there, but they get so bogged down. And by no means do I have like an obscenely large cult following. I just want there to be more words out there of like, gosh, yes, it sucks, but we can still get through this. So I don't think that we're going to be turning off things earlier because it'd be even earlier than last year. But yeah, it might slow a little bit, but I've got 3 months off of work. So I figured I got plenty of time to, I don't know, maybe Jordan will make a couple of special appearances in some of the videos. But yeah, no, I think and there's not really any like goal for like crazy big growth. My thing when I started this is I was like, if it just helps one person, I would really be okay if I had one follower and one like on every video every single week, because I really don't care. And I don't mean to say that I don't care about the people that watch my videos. My goal is not to reach millions of people and impact millions of people. It's literally just one person. If I can make one person see themselves in a different light, be kinder to themselves, and just change that mindset from something that's a little closer to toxic and a little bit closer to positive and optimistic, then let's do that. And along the way, all of the stuff in between, I'm here for that too.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at. It's funny. I posted a link to the podcast on some Air Force related thing, and the number one comment, I think it was on Reddit. So they were doing voting and whatnot. And it was like, I hate Air Force influencers. They're the worst. And I was like, I don't consider myself an influencer, but I hope that, like, to your point, I help one person. So it's not fame, it's not fortune. I mean, I'm paying money to host things. I'm negative if we're talking about money. But yeah, definitely hoping we help some people. Well, Jason, I appreciate you coming out. I hope all the listeners throw me their thoughts, throw me some questions. Let me know if there's anyone out there I need to talk to and have a conversation. But we're on Buzzsprout for audio, YouTube for video, and I thank you, Jason, for coming out, and I love you all. See ya. Well, that was awesome. Good stuff.